As long as you keep their legacy alive, then they're always going to be with you. The only time that your child's not with you is when you try to lock them away and not talk about them anymore.
June K. Collins is the author of Momma You Don't Heal and mother to Bella, a daughter, and to Kaleb, her young son, now on the other side. Watch as June describes how she honors Kaleb every day so he is not forgotten, and how she found inspiration to rebuild and find new purpose in life, and how you can too. I'd like to welcome to the Journeying Soul, June K. Collins. How are you doing today, June?
Doing good.
Good. So, I just wanted to start by asking, like, how are you doing these days? I know it's been some years since Kaleb died,
Yeah,
but you just did your book a couple of years ago. So, how are you doing these days?
I try, well, the way that I try to live my life is like I've already lived my worst day. So, even when I'm having those bad days, I'm like, well, it's not as bad as that day was. So, that's kind of how I do it, and lots of laughs. And I don't know, it's just it was a different turn of events for me, because you're a mom and you're like, okay, I'm going this direction as a special needs mom. And then so, it's just a different way that I thought I was going one way, and then it just is a different way now.
We all go through these things in life where you are one type, you're a person, and
Yeah.
then things happen and you become a different person. Like even before Kaleb, I mean, you said in your book, this is what I think really speaks to this is that you had Kaleb when you were around 28 or decided to have him, you said you never thought you were going to have kids. Like,
Yeah.
it was like that was the person you were. And then I think you said your grandfather died and that
Yeah.
changed
Yeah,
something for
he
you.
died, and I was like, my parents aren't gonna ever see my kids if I don't have kids, because they were getting older. And around here where I live, you're talking, early 20s, they're having kids,
Mm,
and, I was going into my 30s. So that was a big thing for me. And then I decided I was going to be a mom, and then I wasn't a mom. And it's like, well, am I still a mom even though my child is in heaven, or what I call heaven? And then, and then it was like, okay, I'm not having any more kids. And then it was like, oops, here's, your daughter, and so then I was a mom again. So it's
mhm.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy, the turn of events.
Could I ask you just to tell people a little bit of the story of what happened? Caleb, you had Caleb when you were 28 and the delivery was difficult.
Yeah, I had a complete placental abruption. And when I had that complete placental abruption,
And they blew it at the hospital. Like they
yeah.
didn't, you had called them when you started having issues and
Well, then the day of the night that all this happened,
Mhm.
I was in there doing a stress test, and they did a sonogram on me, and then they sent me home because it was Thanksgiving Eve and everybody was getting ready for Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
And I mean, it is what it is, but that's what happened. And we all get like that when holidays come up, we're kind of scatterbrained. And I went home, went to sleep because I was tired. I was feeling really, really tired. Woke up to go to the bathroom at 10 o'clock at night, and that's when I call the hell started. I didn't know what was going on, but that's what I had. I ended up having a complete placental abruption. So like he totally tore away from my wall and he wasn't breathing. And this started, I know that when I got up, it was like 10:30, and they didn't cut me open and pull him out until 1 o'clock. So I believe in something other than us here on earth. For me, it's God. For other people, it's other things. And they were with us that day because I had lost 3.5 pints of blood. And they say the percentages of placental abruptions and babies or mamas living are slim to none, and we both lived. So
Yeah.
the turn of events was kind of crazy. The whole the whole thing was really crazy. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
There was another thing in your book that really, in describing when Caleb died, that I was thought, oh boy, it was just like another layer of stuff to deal with. You're a law enforcement officer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you got to the hospital with Caleb, now this is after his birth, after he's been home with you. At one point, they said to you that they were going to bring in the investigators, or you had to speak with the investigators.
Alicia. Yeah, Alicia. Mhm.
Yeah, and you knew that that meant that Caleb was gone,
Yeah.
but your husband did not.
No, my husband and my parents, because my dad came down here after all of it, because they used to live right in front of us. They didn't know what was going on. I knew what was going on. And obviously, all the law enforcement that I knew that was here knew what was going on.
Yeah, how did you I just can't imagine, like, that was the one thing where I was like, some how did you manage to keep that inside and not say anything when
So, yeah, to this day, I think I reverted back to my law enforcement. Because I did exactly when my ex-husband told me that he wasn't breathing, I did exactly what you do. You dial 911, throw the phone down, law enforcement is coming. Because here, if you dial 911, they're coming. So I knew to throw down the phone. I knew to grab him off the bed, to get a sturdy surface to do CPR, and I just started doing CPR on him. And, anyway, when EMS finally got there, I went and I got his medication, and my dad walked in, asked me what was going on, and I was like, "Everything's gonna be okay." I think that's how I got through it. And then I was really calm. I just and I'm very
Mhm,
calm in bad situations anyway, but, I was just very calm, very nonchalant, and me and one of the officers were actually talking about, "I know he's dead," like, we were talking back and forth, and he was just like, "Oh, well, be positive, da, 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 da," and then, obviously, when we went to the hospital, I tried to explain it to my husband at the time. Brian is Caleb's dad's name, and he was like, "Oh, be positive. Don't say that. He's gonna be fine." And I just shut my mouth. I was like, "I can't do this. Someone else is gonna have to tell him."
of course not. I mean, because 'cause you're like, "I've been on the job. I know exactly what" they're saying exactly what
Yeah.
I've said or have had to say or would have to say.
When they said Alicia was coming, like, I knew because that's what she did. I knew. I knew
Yeah,
then.
yeah. Um, just a little personal thing I wanted to mention, Caleb died on the first day of spring, and my father had also died on the first day of spring, so I was like, "Oh."
Like, to me, that was, like, part of my healing stuff. It was like, he came into this world on Thanksgiving, the year that he was born, and I was thankful that we lived, and then, like, he went out on spring, which is, everybody's ready for spring, they're tired of winter, so, it's a positive day.
Yeah.
So, and
That's
then
what I thought about my dad. My dad was born on Halloween and died
mhm,
on the first day of spring, and I was like, it's a good day to go to the next world, I
yeah.
think, so
Oh, yeah.
so can you tell me the deer story?
Yeah, so after every obviously, this happened in the middle of, like, 4 o'clock in the morning. By
Mhm,
the time we got home, it was, like, daylight. And when I got home, I went to Caleb's room, and then afterwards, it was just, like, so quiet and everything, so I kinda went outside and I just sat on the porch, and I was just staring into the hayfield that's a across from us, and when I was staring into the hayfield, there was, like, a deer that came from the right side and kinda came across, and it kinda stopped there, and, probably about 50 feet in front of me, and I stared at it, and it stared at me, and we just didn't say nothing, and then I say "she," but she walked on into the woods on the other side of my house to the left, and I took it as a sign just because yes, we have deer out here, but they're never that close, they're scared.
mhm,
So I had that incident happen, like, right after it happened, and then I wanna say within, like, 2 weeks of him dying, I had a dream about him, and my biggest thing when he died was nobody can take care of him like I can take care of him, not even God or anybody, and that was my biggest fear is he getting everything he needs because he was special needs.
yeah,
And I went to sleep one night and I had a dream about him. And it was a very, very short dream, or what I remember is very short, but I remember being in a field and he ran to me and he wrapped his arms around my leg and he looked up and he smiled. And I guess it was like a big significance to me because he was in a wheelchair. He couldn't
mhm,
he couldn't walk. He could smile, But when he looked up at me, he wasn't wearing his glasses and he had cortical blindness and he had to have them to see. And it was just like, to me, it was like a sign of like, hey, I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. And I think that helped. It helped. It
I,
helped a lot, I think.
I've had loved ones who've died. I've had those dreams. I've spoken to a lot of people who have those dreams, and it's so important when
Yeah.
when you've lost someone, you want to know that they're okay. And when
Mhm.
you have a dream like that and you see that, oh, I guess this makes sense. They're not in their body anymore, so now they can see fine. Now they can run.
Right.
Like that they're really, really okay. That they're better than they were here in some ways, as much as we miss them. It's like, my father, when he died of Parkinson's disease, and he was ill with that for such a long time. And
Yeah.
to know that it's like he's not trapped in that condition anymore,
Yeah.
day to
Part of
day.
the
So
body. Yeah.
yeah, and for Caleb, that's wonderful. And so also you had some things with cardinals also.
Mhm.
Yes?
Yeah, so, like I said, my mom's house is, like, right in front of ours, and I used to when they lived here, when my mom was still alive, I would go up there and see them every day, and it was a thing because Caleb was special needs, he passed away, and then I did the same thing with my daughter when they were around, and so I would park up there and, I would always ask, like, for signs, like, "Give me a sign," or whatever, and I had the cardinal would come down and get on my mirror, and, he
Hmm.
would peck at the window and then jump back to the mirror, then peck at the window and then jump back at the mirror.
Wow. They
And
usually don't Cardinals usually don't do that.
no, and obviously he couldn't see my window tint was dark, so he
Yeah.
couldn't see me, but, he was there, and then other times, Bella is my daughter's name, and I would be walking up the porch, and we would hear the pecking, and we would turn around, and it would be doing it on the passenger side. And, so I've seen a lot of that, and then at one point um, it had been years after he died, but I could look
Mhm.
out my kitchen window, and there was just I don't know what they were eating, but there was tons of cardinals in the bushes, by the woods, and, it's just something you don't see all the time, and I'm like, "Okay, it's a sign I'm gonna be okay." You don't think you're gonna be okay, you think, like, it's the end of the world, and, for the most part, it's a total you change, you completely change,
I
but
mean, it is the end in the sense that whoever you were before, you're not
Mhm.
that
You're
person and
not
you can't be that person. So,
Mhm.
yeah, you have to become someone
Yeah.
else.
And then I've also had the dragonflies. Like, I've sat when I was actually writing that book, I would sit outside by the pool a lot, and watch my daughter swim, and I would write on my phone. I'd be either dictating it into my phone or writing it, and I had a dragonfly sit down on the chair, that the plastic part of the chair, and I stuck my hand out, and he got on my finger, and he was just there, and I took a picture of that, you
Oh,
know? But, I
yeah.
mean, it's just like little things like that. I'm like, "Okay, well, they're still here, whether I wanna believe it or not. I still believe that he's around." I think he's watching his I think he's watching his sister because she's accident prone, and knock on wood, we have no broken bones or anything like that.
Good. Good, good.
Um, but yeah, I think it's a way of him telling me he's still around, or I believe it is.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring up now more specifically the book, Mama
Mhm,
You Don't Heal. Holding it up for
mhm,
people to see. What do you want other parents to know that find themselves having lost a child? What would you say that you've learned? And the biggest thing is that if you could have known it in advance, if that's possible,
mhm.
how to handle it.
Uh You're n okay, number 1 is you're not alone. That's the biggest thing. I thought I was the only person going through child loss and no one would understand, and
Mm,
although, like, child loss, it's different for every person. Obviously, I lost my son when he was 3 months and 25, 26 days,
mhm.
but we're all the same. We're all gonna feel the same. It just depends on where they were at in life, whether you have more memories or not. So I want them to know that they're not alone and that you can get through it. It's not gonna be easy, but you can get through it. You can laugh again. I remember at one time I felt wrong for laughing, and I actually mentioned that in the book. I felt wrong because I was sitting in work because I went back way too early, and I was sitting in
Mhm.
work, and one of the guys I was working with was trying to make me laugh. He made me laugh, and then I was like, "I shouldn't be laughing." I don't think I should be laughing. But it's okay. It's okay to laugh again, and it's okay to do things, but you gotta remember that you're never gonna go back to the person you were. Um,
Mhm.
it's just a change in you, but that doesn't have to be a bad change. Like, for me, I like to think that I'm a better person now than I was before. One thing I also say to women, or grief in general, is as long as you keep their legacy alive, then they're always gonna be with you. The only time that your child's not with you is when you try to lock them away and not talk about them anymore.
Mhm.
Another big thing that I tell people.
Yeah, I think it's a common thing. I've spoken with a few people who've lost children, and I do think it's a common in my experience, there's this a huge part of grief where it really doesn't make a difference who the person was you lost in sense of like who their relationship to you was. There's
Mhm.
all this stuff that is very common. But then
Yeah.
there are these little things that are different. And I think that one of the things that people who've lost children go through a bit more than people who've lost spouses or siblings or parents is that you're afraid they're going to be forgotten in some
Yes.
way. Like you feel a
Yeah.
responsibility to I had a guy on the show. This is oh God, I'm gonna say it was sometime last year. This guy, Chris Cochran, whose son Christian died when he was, I want to say he was 23. I can't remember if he died at 23 or was diagnosed. He was ill for about a year and then died. And he was like this kid was like the center of the family.
Yeah.
And in talking to Chris, he wrote a whole book based on Christian's life and really very important to him, like you with Caleb, to make sure that people knew who his son was
Yeah.
and how special he was. And yeah,
Mm.
and I think for every parent out there that's going through what you've gone through, it's like that's totally normal to feel that way, you know?
Yeah, and, and another thing, there's more people that know Caleb now than are left that knew him.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's one of the biggest things too, is like you can still pass your child's legacy and pass who he was and what they did and how they were in life. You can pass it on, but you have to keep them alive even when they're not with you physically here.
Mhm.
So,
Do you have at this point any rituals you do throughout the year to I mean obviously Thanksgiving around not that Thanksgiving falls on the same day every year, it does not, but
yeah.
Thanksgiving is around the time of Caleb's birthday.
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you do now?
Well, I most of the time I don't. Well, his death date and his birthday, for a while I went out to his grave at his birthday and put a balloon on there. I don't do that anymore. I take flowers out there around Christmas time. And at Christmas time I have my big thing I do now is I have a memorial tree. And it's a white Christmas tree, and the topper is angel wings, blue angel wings,
Mhm.
and I have his Christmas ornaments on there, and then I have, Hallmark makes, like, these shell remembrance ornaments, and every year I get one of those, and I do that every year, and then I actually still sleep with one of Caleb's blankets, baby blankets. I still have that. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's something that you do or not, like a memorial thing, but I
Mhm.
still have it, um and I don't know, I think every day that I talk about him, every podcast I do, the book and everybody I talk to about him, about something, whenever he's brought up, it's a memorial to him because he's being
Mhm.
remembered. I think you hit it on the head about you don't want your child forgotten. You're so worried that everybody's gonna forget him. And, I think every time I talk about him, it's kind of a memorial.
Mhm. Mhm. How were those first holidays after Caleb died for you? Holidays can be so brutal for people when they've lost anybody, and especially, like I said, I can't imagine what the first Thanksgiving was like,
Mhm.
especially. How did you, manage those first few years?
My whole family kinda just skated through 'em. The hardest holiday was for me because Caleb died in March, that Mother's Day. That
Oh.
was extremely hard because I had just lost him, and Caleb was my only child. So, my big thing was, am I even a mom? Am I even a mom anymore? And that was the thing that I was struggling with so bad, and I can remember going to my parents' house and doing Mother's Day with her, and she gave me a Mother's Day card, and I remember crying and asking her, "Am I even still a mother?" So Mother's Day was really hard just because, I mean, it was so soon. And
Mhm.
then that next in June was my birthday. And then, you start the 4th of July, and we always did stuff on 4th of July. And, Halloween, we always dressed them up. And,
Mhm.
you know, I know that it's kind of like a blur. Those holidays
Mhm.
are pretty much a blur. We did celebrate them. I do remember that. But we didn't have I'm lucky at the time I didn't have other children. I hate it for the parents that lose children that have those other young children that are still there because I can't imagine how hard that is to go through those holidays. It's just kind of like a blur, like you go through the motions,
Yeah.
but sometimes you cry, sometimes you don't. But I guess the biggest one that I remember is that Mother's Day. That Mother's Day, I say it in my book, I was a hot mess on my Mother's Day, just because
Mhm.
I was so confused on what I was. Who am I now?
Well, and I'm hoping people told you you are still a mother. I mean,
Yeah.
tomorrow, I mean, just so you know, June, tomorrow I'm interviewing, it's my week of Collinses. Tomorrow I'm interviewing a woman named Sheila Collins,
Mhm.
and she lost 2 children.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you see the work she's doing now, and what she did afterwards and what she's doing now, obviously still a mom.
Yeah.
You're still a mom. Of course you
Oh,
are.
yeah.
You know?
It took a long time though, I struggled with that for a while and how I changed that. I struggle with it, and I can remember someone asked me if I had kids because I was still young, I was in my early 30s,
Yeah.
and people were like, do you have kids? Because that's like the normal question you ask someone that age.
Yeah, and
And
when you've had a loss, it's not a straight up answer. It's
yeah,
like, yeah.
so I told him no, I didn't have any kids.
Mhm.
And that killed me when I said that because I was like, I don't want to deal with it. And I said no. And that changed my view on it. I was like, you know what? I still am a mom. And then obviously from times after that, it was, yeah, I have a son who's an angel. I would say that. I didn't say heaven. I said I have a son who I have an angel son. He would
Mhm.
have been whatever age he was at the time.
Yeah.
Now I've been doing it so long, I'm just like, yeah, I have a son who was born in 2019. He's an angel, and then I have a daughter.
Yeah. I
That's
wish I knew you then, June, because I would have say whatever you want
yeah,
to get. I mean, it's between you and you. Say whatever you want. You need to get through the day. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Because when we run into people when we've had losses, like some people, ask you how you're doing and what's going on, or they ask you about stuff about yourself. And some people, you feel like, oh, I can open up to this person
mm,
and going, but other people, you don't want to. Sometimes you just don't want to. You just maybe you're just trying to get through the day, or maybe it's that person's vibe, and you don't want to have to explain. So
mhm,
it's okay, whatever you want to do.
yeah. I mean, obviously, years later,
Yeah,
I claim it, and now I'm fine with it. But then back then, I mean, I did not know. I did not know I didn't know what I was.
yeah, I completely understand. Um, One other thing I wanted to ask you: you had written in your book that no one matters but your angel child. This was a piece of advice you gave to moms. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I guess for me, what that means is no one matters except your angel child. That means that you do what you want to do. You honor your child the way you want to honor your child. You live your life the way you want to live it. You're always going to get the naysayers that say, oh, why is she so happy? Or why, how can she live with that? Or how can she, he, you're always going to get the
Mhm.
naysayers.
Yeah,
So just live for your child. Live for how they would want you to be. And I know that's hard to actually believe and think at first of how they would want you to be happy again, but
mhm,
live for them and yourself, not for anybody else. And I say the naysayers.
yeah. In terms of the naysayers, like, how do you think people could better support, like, parents who've lost children? Like, what could you have used in terms of support or when it happened to you?
Like
I mean, just
for
and
me,
let me just
it wasn't.
interrupt you and just say,
Yeah.
June, in general, we're pretty bad at grief. You know what I mean? People are pretty, we're kind of not great with handling the whole thing. So I think it might be even especially acute with parents. So
Yeah.
anyway, but please, I interrupted.
Yeah, so, for me, and I'm sure it's for a lot of parents that have lost children that I've talked to some, it's not what you say, it's just being there. You're gonna get off the wall stuff, like you can have more children. I got, well, you couldn't have lived like that for the rest of your life because my son was special needs. You're gonna get that, well, there's always the next one, or, oh, you have more children. You're always gonna get something like that because people don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not what you say, it's just being there. And I can remember Caleb's doctor, one of Caleb's doctor, his pediatrician, he came to Caleb's funeral or viewing, and all he said to me was, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No." And I just cried with him. And that's all he said. And I remembered that to this day. And he hugged me or whatever. And then I went outside and I sat on a bench, and one of my older cousins came and sat down with me. And he was quiet for a while, and he said, "No parent should ever have to go through this." And that's all he said. And it was just the point that he sat there and that he was there with me. So sometimes it's not bringing the food, talking to somebody, or what to say. It's just being there to sit in
Yeah.
silence with the person. Um,
Yeah.
listen if they want to tell stories, but a lot of times you don't want to tell stories, but sometimes they will, and they'll tell about the good times, and it's just listening.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a thing we have that goes on though, where people try to come up and explain it to you. Like, you know, like you
Mm.
were saying, but yeah, but I mean, you've also hit that point of grace where you realize that it comes from a place where people just they don't know what to say, so they say the wrong thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
people don't know how. I mean, and I talk about this in the book too, is like it's out of the life cycle. We're taught that you're born, you go through your toddler and teenage years and then young adult and middle age,
Mhm.
older, and then you pass away. And when you take that piece out of that cycle that we're used to seeing, people don't know how to react. And that's okay too. I mean, it's just not the norm.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, June, so I am gonna ask you my lightning round of questions now.
Okay.
So, what does a well-lived life look like to you?
It looks like me having purpose. I think that's the biggest thing is having purpose no matter what I do. Being thankful for every day. That would be my purpose. Purpose, I guess purpose is the big thing, and just living happily each day, or living as happily as I can each day. Not that I'm miserable, but everybody has bad days. So, we're not all happy all the time, but just being happy and having fun, that
Yeah,
would be it.
yeah. What do you suspect is the true nature of reality?
I say this to a lot of people is that we're guaranteed life. We're not guaranteed life every single day, and we're not guaranteed that life is going to be easy. We're never promised that life is supposed to be easy. And I think that we all go through these things in life to make us stronger and to make us a better person. There's so many different things that going through things like this, and it could be grief, it could be some kind of trauma, it could be not getting that job, not being living up to your abilities of what you wanna do or whatever, and, I think that's what it is.
Mm. When you die, what do you hope to find or have answered?
So this kinda goes back to Caleb.
I
So,
thought it might.
yeah, it actually does, but, I want the biggest thing when I was going through my grief, one of the big things that I was going through is, like, what stopped with Caleb? Like, he had so many issues. Did his brain stop working? Did his heart stop? Did his lungs stop working? What happened? I guess, that's, like, one of the biggest things that I want answered. I don't dwell on it anymore, but I really want that answered.
Mhm.
I really want that answered. I guess that's the biggest thing. I really wanna know.
Does that is that part of I mean, everybody goes through some guilt and I should have and what happened and wishing they had. more, an ability to do something. Because the one thing, as I was saying to you earlier, that there are things across grief, no matter who you've lost, that are common. And one of them is the powerlessness we all feel. No matter who you've lost, it puts you right in that spot where you can't change the outcome. So do you think that that question is part of that little piece for you, where if
Yeah.
you knew something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, for a long time, I used to go through that day over and over again and the day
Yeah.
before, and, he had just went to Shands in Gainesville, Florida. That's where his specialist doctors were, and he got a clear bill of health, and I'm just like, why didn't I see this? Why didn't I notice something? Why didn't, I think it has to go back to the whys, like, well, if I was up at if I woulda woke up, I could have, done CPR faster and he would have been all right, or I could have seen that he was struggling, we did shift what I call shift work. And,
Yeah.
so he would wake up with Caleb and I would sleep, and then it would be vice versa. We would switch like that. And, I'm like, God, what if I was, on shift that night, would I have been able to save him? And I think everybody does, because we all go back to, like, I should have known because of this, and the whole thing is like we're just judging. We're just
Yeah.
judging ourselves,
Yeah.
I think everything happens in its own time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And we don't always have the power. I mean, literally, you're sometimes, yeah, people lose people who aren't even in the state, like
yeah,
that they're in. So that's the tough part. So
yeah.
where can people find you and the work you're doing and get a copy of your book?
Okay. Yeah. So, um, obviously my book is on Amazon. That's the easiest place to tell people. If you type in the name of it, you can find it at a whole bunch of different places. But definitely on Amazon you can find it, but Walmart, Target, Barnes& and Noble. And then I have a group on Facebook, where I think it's 1,700 women are in that group right now. They're all moms that have lost one or more children. And that Facebook group, it's private. It's just a bunch of moms talking about their child loss and helping each other out. That is at Women Surviving Child Loss. And again, that's on Facebook. And then I have TikTok and Instagram, and I have a Facebook business page under author June Kraholic.
I'll link to all that on the episode page.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
any of those platform forms, if you message me, I message back. Some moms just have like a few questions they want to ask, or hey, this is what I'm feeling. What do you think? Or, and we just throw
Mhm.
around ideas. They don't feel comfortable putting it in the group. And so I'll talk to them privately. Some moms I've gotten on a phone with if they're having a really bad time. So any of those platforms, I answer all the messages.
That's terrific. Yeah, I was speaking with somebody on another podcast that's deals with our like cancer, and he's written a book and he's put his phone number in the book, and
Yeah.
he's talked to people from all around the world, like just but I mean not regularly. It sounds like it's like kind of a, somewhat sporadically, like he's involved
Yeah.
with stuff, but those connections sometimes, make a difference, and I know it makes a difference for the people offering the connection. So I hope you're getting that
Yeah,
same
and
kind of.
it's a different view, I think one of the big things in child loss is you view it one way, but when you hear the views of the same thing from another mom, you might see it differently.
Mm, mhm.
And that's why the group was started, which is really weird because I'm an introvert and I didn't wouldn't do group sessions myself, but I did it for the other moms, and it's really good though because you see things from a different perspective. So
Mhm.
I like that part of it.
Yeah. I mean, one good thing, June, that's come out of this, not saying that there's a lot, but that you're not as introverted as you were.
No,
Yeah, a
no, I
little
think
bit.
I'm still, I'm still introverted, but the best thing of it is Caleb's legacy lives on. It lives on through everything,
Yeah,
and the women that are in the group that I have too is their children live on
yeah.
through
It
that
lives
group.
on in every conversation you all have together. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts for the listening audience today?
Just I always tell people, and it's one of the things I say usually at the end is, your child's legacy began the day that they died. And to keep your child's legacy alive, although it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be one of the hardest things that you'll ever have to deal with, but you'll feel better getting past the first stages of it and keeping their legacy alive because there's still a piece of you.
Mm.
And obviously you're a lot stronger than you think you can be, and you'll get through it. You'll get through it. It's gonna be hard, but you'll get through it if you want to. Mhm.
That's true. There is a point of some of these
Yeah,
journeys where it's like where you have where the juncture is you have to make the decision,
yeah,
you know?
you do.
Do you wanna take the next step forward, you know? So, very
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
June, thanks so much for sharing your story and being on the show and giving me your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for watching. Click to join us on another journey, and don't forget to subscribe.